Welcome to Not So Standard Deviations. This is episode 83, and I'm Roger Peng from the Johns Hopkins Data Science Lab, and I'm here with Hillary Parker of Stitch Fix. In this episode, we're talking about Cricket one more time. We're going to talk about live streaming data analyses, Styles Challenge Friday, and Humans in the Loop. One more thing I wanted to mention is that for those of you who enjoy listening to your podcasts on YouTube or Spotify, you can find Not So Standard Deviations on those channels. If you're on YouTube, you can just search for my channel, and we have most of the recent episodes of Not So Standard Deviations on there. And on Spotify, you can find us in the usual way, and all of our episodes are on there. So feel free to listen to us on those venues. Finally, I just want to mention that we do have a Patreon that you can use to support us at the $1, $2, or $3 per episode level. At the $1 per episode level, you get good feelings and a chance to support us. At the $2 per episode level, you get a Not So Standard Deviations hex sticker. And at the $3 per episode level, you get the hex sticker and some of our outtakes from each episode. So feel free to go to patreon.com/nssdeviations to support the podcast.
I feel like the talk I've been giving about design thinking and data science and all of that it's coming even more and more true in my professional life, where like I've just found that the more, apparently David Lynch has a book about how like transcendental meditation like opened him up to be like super creative and go after the big fish, he was saying, like rather than like little fish, obviously. Okay. And I mean, methods aside, I feel like that's been doing the design thinking has allowed me to go after the big fish, and I'm realizing even bigger fish than like other people in various companies, like not just data scientists but anyone. There's not a lot of people willing to think about like a 5-year project and like take it on and not be demoralized along the way.
So when you think about 5 years, would you say that it doesn't sound like quite so long a time as it used to?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I realize the project I've been working on now, it's like 8 or 10 months, and I feel like time has flown. Like it doesn't. If you had told me when I started that this was going to be a year plus before I saw the results of it, I would have been like, oh, that's so long. But now I'm like, that wasn't long at all. That was actually really fast.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe my perspective is changing as I've taken on the first few projects like that.
I feel like the same has happened to me. Like, I feel like I can very easily talk about a 10-year timeline or something,
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
And I think, I think the assistant professors are like, I need a paper now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like as you get more, you have to have those little wins early on in your career. But then as you get more secure, it's like, I mean, I think what's critical is to start to realize that if you really want to have impact, you have to start thinking longer term.
It just takes longer to do that.
Yeah. It takes longer. It takes longer to get people to buy in. And,
right.
Yeah, it takes longer to change processes and everything.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in your field, it would be literally like, oh, we want to use this new technology and we have to go and like put it all over the planet.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like we want to change the knowledge in this area. It's like, well, it's going to take a coordinated effort to do that.
Totally. Yeah. I had a former coworker now, who was always sending me Harvard Business Review articles. And so I actually picked up a physical copy of Harvard Business Review.
Okay.
It's like big change. And so there was one that was called, it was talking about like the idea of chaos pilots. And I don't know if that's something we've talked about. I imagine we have talked about it. This
sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just the idea that like the people who can kind of navigate organizational turmoil, but both keep really focused on a long-term goal and like be able to adapt to the changing ground underneath them. And I feel like that's something that like in the service of these longer goals, that's something I've had to adapt to. And yeah, again, I think because data scientists are kind of in this horizontal cross-functional position by design, like you actually can be the people sort of doing that, versus if you're in like a very strong vertical, you can't necessarily, like, you're very impacted by organizational changes.
Right.
Yeah. But also, I'm saying that, and then my organization didn't change. Like, I've been, like, we have a chief algorithms officer, and so, like, my life hasn't changed in terms of the bigger org. I've had 5 bosses since I was at Stitch Fix, so that has changed a lot. And that was it was just due to the fact that the role I'm doing, it wasn't clear where it should live, and it was this new muscle, and like in the middle of it, we actually got a product team. Like, we didn't have a product team for the first year or so. And like the projects I was working on were like clearly product projects. So like had to essentially go through this monumental shift in leadership, but that ended up being so positive. Anyway, like, so there's kind of like the chaos pilot thing. And then, in this issue I just picked up, there was also something about like how important cross-siloed leadership is, which I thought was really cool. And it basically was just saying like the people who go between different functions and are able to kind of speak all the languages, and like, yeah, map out some sort of big cross-functional solution, like, are like hugely important for successful projects. So.
Yeah. And in my experience, very rare.
Oh yeah, no, it's freaking hard. Like,
yeah, it is hard. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you both have to be like, okay, I might not see the results of this for 5 years. So you have to have like some sort of, I don't want to say intrinsic motivation, but you do have to be motivated by the outcome quite a bit.
Yeah. I feel like in science, like you have to be able to do that, but also like find a way to scratch out some papers like on the way. Like there has to be some, like, you can't just be like, well, let's just figure it out, see what happens 5 years from now. Like there has to be some like couple of singles and doubles that you hit along the way.
Well, totally. And I think in the tech perspective, it's like, working with PMs, the first thing, they like map out a long-term goal, and then you figure out every single step along the way, and you have to essentially like prove the value of what you're doing incrementally.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's like pretty similar approach.
Yeah.
But like, if you just focus on the short-term projects, it's just like so demoralizing. Like, it's like, why are we doing this? This
totally
doesn't really
agree.
matter.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but I think striking that balance is like, it's hard. I find it, and the more I kind of see it, it's like, it's hard. It's not like a natural thing to do.
And I do feel like, yeah, like, I don't think, like, the reason I feel lucky right now is that the project I'm working on, and that I'm like, the aspect of it that I'm driving is such a like passion for me, that it, like, I feel ownership over it. I feel passion over it. And I think if it were something I wasn't as bought into, I wouldn't be able to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway. You know what it reminds me of? Like sometimes you have a TV show, and like the TV show has like an overarching kind of arc to it. But then in the middle, sometimes there's like an episode that's just kind of like by itself.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
like, you have to kind of like, I imagine writers have to do the same thing. Like they have this big arc, but then every once in a while, there's like an episode that just kind of like is just a good standalone, and you have to be able to manage that kind of, in order to make the big thing happen, you have to manage the short-term little wins here and there.
Yeah. And the short-term skill development, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the only thing that's motivated me to learn stuff I didn't necessarily want to learn is like when I can keep the long-term goal, or, like I have to really orient around the outcome, because the sheer skill development of things, like I like doing it for R, but I don't like doing it as much for, some of the more back-end infrastructure things. Like, I don't love learning inelegant solutions. And so, but then I have to do it sometimes, and it's like, okay. And I feel like I don't know if this is your experience, but once I get into a project, I'm like much more, I enjoy it. Like once I get into that kind of flow state, I'm like, okay, even if I never would have said I want to learn, this, like, I don't know, like PySpark is coming to mind.
Okay.
Just because, like, I don't, obviously I don't use Python as much as R, and PySpark it's like highly functional, but it just has all these little like quirks that are different, and I'm learning that and Python, and it's like understanding the difference. Like it's not like if you learn Python, if you learn like pandas, it doesn't one-to-one translate to PySpark. There's like little differences.
Right.
And that's like so annoying. And I'm not like, good, I can't wait to master this, like, because I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. But if I keep really focused on the outcome, then I'm like, yes, I want to do this.
Yeah, I think that's true for me too. I mean, there are a lot of, for example, when we put all these courses online, there were like so many little things that I had to learn that have very little to do with my job, but you kind of have to power through.
Oh, yeah, that actually sounds, I would not like that.
And a lot of it, it's interesting, for me, a lot of it was actually not technical, it was more like there's like coordination that has to happen between the university, and there's all these there's like a person who's in charge of this. Like, oh, I didn't really know that there was a person, there's like so much stuff had to happen that I was like totally unaware of.
Oh, yeah.
From like an organizational and like legal standpoint. And so now I'm pretty good at that stuff now.
But it's like, it doesn't necessarily probably feel transferable or extensible or, like, I guess you're enabled to do this again.
It's not like directly transfer. Like if I were to go somewhere else, like it wouldn't be directly transferable. But at least it's one of those things where it's like now that stuff exists, and that like if you were going to do something like that again, you would have to like make it happen.
Yeah. This reminds me, so I have a coworker and friend here who bought a house in Oakland that was like, totally trashed inside and completely refurbished it and did it this house is like, it's just perfect. Like there was a British woman, I was there, and there was also like one of her other friends who was British, and I just remember her being like, this house is perfection. But like when she talks about it, my friend, she's not like, oh, it's so great. It's like a Pyrrhic victory. She's just like, yeah, let me tell you about like the gray hair I had during that time. Like, like it's just like, it sounds like every single step was 10x harder than she thought it would be going in, and there's like all sorts of permits, and like I think they had to like raise the house. It was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There was some reason they had to raise it. Yeah. And like, she bought like vintage doors, but then it's like vintage doors aren't as standard, so the door frames had to be like bespoke. It just, well, I mean, and it's gorgeous and perfect, and she kept focused on that long-term goal, but I think like it can become too much.
Well, I think I was just gonna say, the house is a system. Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you like jiggle one thing on the back door, and all of a sudden you're like changing the porch light. It's like
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, I think that it's trendy in that neighborhood, or like, and knowing her kind of, I think she was really motivated to like keep as much as she could that was original. But I was like, what if you just like raised it and done a new house? She was like, oh, it would have been like way easier, way cheaper. I was like, oh, wow. That just doesn't even, I think you're right. Like iterating on a system is much harder than just like wiping it out. But anyway, do it, but also sometimes it sucks is what.
Yeah.
Not doing a house necessarily, but like focusing on a long-term vision.
That's super useful advice.
Yeah. Keep your chin up. Sort of.
You know what? I have for you today?
What?
I have for the third episode in a row some follow-up on cricket.
Can't wait. Tell me more.
I think you'll appreciate this. So I actually, so for the third episode in a row, we're talking about this Duckworth-Lewis-Stern formula for cricket matches, and I honestly I talked about it without really reading about what it was. And it turned out to be it was a little more interesting than I thought it was going to be, actually. And so I was hoping you would indulge me here for just a second.
Oh yes.
So
can't wait.
It's one of these things. Well, first of all, it's I think it's unique to cricket.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about most, if not all, American sports, there's a very frequent back and forth between who has the ability to score points, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. So you think of basketball, it's the possessions go back and forth very quickly. Or in baseball, they switch every inning, right? Mm-hmm. So you generally have a chance to score points within a short amount of time, right?
Right.
I can't really think of a sport that isn't like that. So cricket is different because like in a long test match, which might be like 5 days long, right? Mm-hmm. The one team will be at bat for like a day, right?
Yeah.
And then like the next day, like the other team might be up to bat.
Does
right?
the other team show up for the?
Well, they have to be in the field, right? I mean, it's kind of like baseball in that sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
like so the issues are like, let's say like the first team's up to bat for like the first day, and then the second day it rains.
Yeah.
So then you're like, the game stops for a while, and then let's say the weather clears, and now the other team has less time to like catch up. So like basically the idea is that like the first team will score a number of runs, and then the other team has to essentially beat that number of runs.
I see.
But if there's like a rain delay or something, then they won't have as much time or whatever. And so the idea of this formula is that they kind of scale the level at which they need to score, the number of runs that they need to score in order to win the match.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense to me.
So if like the first team hits like, I don't know, it's like 100 runs or something, right? And then it rains the next day, then the other team might only have to score like 75 or something,
right,
in order to win. Even though they don't actually score more runs, it's like on a proportional basis. Basically, they scored higher.
Yeah. Okay, I'm more into that.
But see, that's the question. Like, do you think that's good, or like, is that better, or I don't know. Like,
yeah,
it feels weird though.
In track, this exists to some degree because they switched from yards to meter at some point, but there was like obviously a bunch of records in yards, and so at my high school they recalibrated the yards records into meters, which did feel a little icky because it's like, wait, those last few meters you're going slower because you're more tired, and I don't know if they took that, but that's the thing. If you have a good model, I guess you could take that into account. And
well, the other interesting thing about this model is that, for cricket, that is it's actually proprietary.
Oh, really?
So, like, my understanding is that no one except for the people who run the model like knows exactly what the inputs are and like what the transformation is, and, whatever.
So that people aren't just like endlessly bike shedding it.
Or gaming it. I don't know. Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, gaming it. I can see that. Huh.
So,
yeah, it would totally change your strategy if you knew, like, what's the probability of rain tomorrow? Okay, let's, like, make sure we score a bunch early and then not care about later.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be funny to, like, game it based on the weather forecast or something.
But totally, like, wouldn't you? That would only make sense.
Right, yeah. You got to make use of all available data.
Yeah. No, I mean, this strikes me as like, the way that we handled ties, or it's just sort of like this weird unfairness that has to happen in extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
Like the soccer, like kind of like the kickoff thing, which I don't know the rules of soccer enough I feel like sometimes it doesn't happen when I feel like it should.
What, like the penalty kicks thing?
Yeah. Or like if it's tied and the match is over, then you do like the kickoff. I don't know. Right? Isn't that how it works?
Well, some games they just end with a tie.
Right. Then sometimes you don't.
Yeah, I think it depends on like what kind of tournament it is. And
yeah. Like then it's just like each side just like gets a shot at the goal.
Right.
Until someone makes it, which feels like terribly unfair, right? So anyway, yeah, it feels kind of like that. It feels more in the spirit of that than in the spirit of...
Actually, it kind of reminds me of this. There was like a discussion way back when about like who the fastest person is. Like, is it the person who does the 100-meter dash or the person who does the 200-meter? And it's like, do you scale the 200-meter time to be like what it would have been in the 100-meter, like that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, no.
Okay. I mean, you don't have strong opinions about that, apparently.
Well, it's just, not a straight linear transformation. Anyway, but...
So you don't think that scaling back the 200-meter time is fair?
You would have to... you just exert your efforts so differently.
Yeah.
You don't hit max speed during a 200 the same way you do with a 100.
Okay.
Yeah, so because you have longer to go. So,
okay. Well, let me ask you then: who's faster then? Who do you think is faster? I guess the 100-meter person or the 200-meter person?
usually a 200-meter person does also run the 100-meter. So
Okay.
I don't think it's like who can reach the fastest top speed and then that's the thing, it's conditioned on a time duration.
Right. Okay.
Even if it's infinitesimal.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
I think calculus could be used to solve this problem. Yeah. Who can accelerate the fastest?
I thought calculus was never going to be useful.
Yeah, exactly.
Boy, was I wrong.
This is the one time.
So, actually, I have a question for you that comes from our last episode.
Okay.
Because I was actually, I think I've mentioned this before. Sometimes I edit the episode and I realize that we had a discussion about something, but I was barely paying attention. So,
that's not the first time someone's told me that.
No, so you made a comment last time about the Style Challenge Friday.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we kind of moved on after you mentioned it. But I want to ask you about that actually.
Yeah.
I assume that's amongst your team, not like the whole company.
It actually turned into the whole company, but I would say that the most enthusiastic participants are people in the algorithms and engineering org.
Okay.
Because I think the average merch person is probably every day is the style challenge.
Right, yeah. Why just Friday, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the challenges are definitely intro level. They're not okay, this year on the runway for Dior we saw this. It's much more wear monochrome. Or
so that leads me to ask you then, why does the algorithms team do it at all? I mean, besides the fact that maybe it's fun. I mean, is there a deeper reason to do it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm the one who started it.
Oh, okay. I don't think I knew that. All right.
Yeah, and the reason why there's two reasons. But the main reason was that I was getting more into fashion. I actually had sort of a friend who a friend of a friend who became a friend.
You cut out the middle friend?
No, the middle friend's still there, but it's so it's a friend who's not maybe as close as other friends.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but she's great, and she has on Instagram. She was doing this thing called Style Me October, and she got really into it. And it was just every day in October there was a different challenge, where it'd be something like wear monochrome or back to school or mix prints and patterns or whatever. And so, and it was just fun. I always was oh, I kind of want to do that. And I guess as I was gaining confidence in fashion via working at Stitch Fix and reading fashion books all the time in order to be better at my job, I started one day. When October came last year, I wanted to participate. And then I just opened it up to I started a Slack channel and was hey, this would be fun. I guess, yeah, I think I just wanted people to talk to about it or something. And then it also was always kind of a pet peeve of mine that we didn't, as an org, talk about fashion that much. So I think there was probably the main motivation for me was, one, I wanted to do it. And two, I wanted to be a leader in the org for a different way of approaching the work. But then a whole month of it was a lot, and people did a few days, and then I don't know why. I do know why, because I mean it was related to this longer term project, but I just wanted to do this more regularly again, and so there was a work quote unquote reason for it, and I just started I changed the channel from Style Me October to Style Challenge Friday, and we did it a few times, and then somehow it got super popular for a while, and then now it's kind of tapered to maintenance mode.
Okay. Yeah.
And the cadence, it's not clear, what the right cadence is, because part of me wants to keep it regular, and then part of me is oh, maybe we should give people a break or whatever. But
so I guess I wanted to ask you then, how did it make you better at your job, at your data science job, I guess?
I think it forces you to be mindful of fashion in a different way. I think a lot of people learned a lot about fashion, what does monochrome mean, which means wear all one color.
Okay.
And Yeah, I don't know. It just like, and we also wanted people to talk about it. We did a challenge. One of the most popular challenges was when you had someone else dress you. So like show someone else your closet one way or another, and then have another person like compose an outfit from those components.
Oh.
Yeah, and like it's really interesting because usually the person's like, wow, I would never wear this, and this doesn't feel like me, but it's also everything they own. So
did you just like send a link to your Airtable?
That might have been when everyone started to adopt Airtable. I had my partner dress me, which he actually does like frequently. It's not. Although I'd say that like this challenge made it like after that we've implemented Michael Mondays.
Okay.
But yeah, so I dressed someone else via her Airtable. It definitely would be easy. I think some people like FaceTimed with a friend and went through their closet, or like a roommate or husband or whatever. But yeah, that one was really fun. And then we also did one with like twins, and that one people got really into as well, where you would dress. Like two people had to agree on what to wear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that one was interesting because some people did like identical. And then the woman I was talking about with the house, she and someone did this really cool thing where it was like almost they were like scrambles of each other where they are wearing stripes and stuff. But like he had on a black and white striped shirt and she had black and white striped pants. And it was really cool. So yeah, I think just like getting people to flex that sort of creative muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it results in, I mean, I guess I do believe it results in better work. I couldn't like connect the dots and be like, and then this thing got better.
Right.
But I've also
track any metrics.
Yeah. There's no KPIs.
Right.
But then I've learned also a lot about like, where people are at with fashion and what sort of fluency is there and what types of challenges are fun versus what, like one that was a real like clunk was like dress like you're presenting to the CEO. I think that just elicited way too many like anxiety feelings in people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Which I was just surprised. I don't know. That didn't, that's not how I feel about presenting the CEO.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which, yeah, was interesting because, anyway, so I feel like I'm learning a lot about where is dressing fun and playful versus where is it more emotionally taxing, and it's all interesting.
I like the idea that you can kind of do it on a regular basis, and I also like it's something that that can kind of happen in parallel with like your regular work, right? Like you can dress in a certain way and you still do like your job, right? And because it reminded me of, like I feel like a lot, so a lot of like statisticians, for example, who work in biology will often like work in have some experience working in a lab, for example, which is like, that's interesting, but it's like you can't like do that on a regular basis, right?
Yeah,
right. Like it's nice to understand, like maybe get a snapshot of what a laboratory science is like, but then you kind of have to move on, right?
Right.
And I think it's interesting that this is something that's like it's informative and it gets people talking, but it doesn't like consume a huge amount of time necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wonder if there's something. I mean, this is getting kind of like Zen-ish, if you will, but I wonder if there's something that you could do, like if you're collaborating with a lab, if you could go in and like make plates or like do something really small and maintenance-y that would still though keep you connected with like the physical instruments, or like I feel like that connection, like I said, it's kind of abstract, and I don't think you could convince someone like this is immediately actionable, but even just like being in the physical space and seeing the instruments and noticing if they change, and like I think there's some value there.
Yeah. I just think it might be harder to execute. I just
well, yeah, if your collaborators are like far away, then definitely.
Yeah.
But I guess when I say the maintenance task, my thought there was that would be like maybe it's only 30 minutes a week or like 15 minutes. So it doesn't have to be that you like learn how to use complex tools all the time.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I would have benefited from that for sure. Like, I don't think I ever saw a microarray chip, and I like use that. Like, I analyze the data on them. So, yeah, like that would have been cool.
I guess I feel like the advantage with clothes is that everyone wears them.
Yeah, no, it's like it is definitely. I totally am aware when I give these talks about like and design thinking, like think about your product. I have like basically one of what I consider to be one of the best things, application. Like it's super fun to me, and everyone does it. Everyone loves talking about it. Like even people who don't like clothes want to talk about the fact that they don't like clothes.
Right?
Like it's just like you have to do it every day, so everyone has opinions,
right?
And,
yeah, but I think if you were to generalize this idea, I mean, I'm not sure how you do it, but it'd be something like that. Like, it'd be useful to talk about like how you could do something like this in another area. That's like something that you do on a regular. It doesn't have to be every day, but on a regular basis, that kind of connects you to the area, gets people talking about it, and you have like a personal connection to it. And it allows you to learn about kind of like the data that you're working on, essentially.
Yeah, I think yes.
So I don't know. I'm trying to think about like how I might do that in my own area. I'm not exactly sure, but
I mean, I feel like I have opinions about that, which is that I really feel like you should have students and postdoc, like people who are working with you seriously, to like live in an area with high pollution for a week or something.
But you wouldn't recommend doing that on a regular basis, right? Like
right.
That's like a little dangerous, right? But
yeah, but I wonder if are there? I guess there's like the pollution itself. There's the tools that collect the pollution, or collect the pollution data. Are there any of those nearby?
Well, I was thinking that like you can actually get them now. You can buy things like monitors and whatnot, and they're actually fairly cheap. And so like you could have people, like you could actually, like it used to be like you couldn't get a decent monitor for less than like, I don't know, unless it was like thousands of dollars, but now they're pretty cheap. So you could get like monitors and like, put them out, look at data, see what that task is like, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great one. And like, I mean, even having someone with us with the wildfires and, just the drastic change in pollution, like me trying to notice health effects of being in that environment, like, oh yeah, my throat's more scratchy or whatever. Like, I feel like there's maybe not everyone would be as interested in that, but kind of the personal metric, because that's ultimately like you're wanting to connect pollution to health outcomes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and like having the Dyson air filter that like monitors the pollution, like that is interesting data for me to look at, where in the app it like shows like, oh yeah, it got worse, and like it gets worse every morning. I don't know what that's about. I guess just like heat like stirs up, or people start driving or something. I don't know.
There's often a peak in the morning and a peak it's like a diurnal kind of pattern.
Okay, so why is that?
Well, it depends on sometimes it is like traffic, like morning traffic and afternoon traffic. Kicks up, so there's two peaks during the day. That depends a little bit on where you live. So,
yeah, I am near the entry to the 101. So.
That's not going to help you. Yeah.
Yeah. But I noticed it. Yeah. I felt like it was really correlating with sunrise.
Well, certain pollutants only are, what's the word? Only formulate when there's light. Like ozone, for example, is only around when there's light. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like a flurry of activity when
there's like a big ramp up. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So I don't. Even that is like, yeah. So maybe what you need to tell people is to buy a like fancy air filter and a fancy monitor, or like a cheap, sufficient air filter and monitor that they can.
Well, I was thinking, for like statisticians in my area, I think the people, like the thing that you need to understand, I think, is like the challenges of collecting data. And so I feel like so you could have a thing where it's like, well, let's say like every Friday we'll go collect some data or something like that, right? And just to see how hard it can be to get good quality data,
Yeah, totally.
Just
yeah.
because like, monitors fail, or, or they have to be put in the right place, or, or like something, someone forgets to plug it in, or, it's like all these things can go wrong. And I think as a statistician who just kind of like stares at the numbers, it's hard to appreciate that.
Yeah. I think that just reminds me of the doing the little kind of toy projects, like we call them data science design challenge. I think like getting students or like postdocs or whoever to do that would be really interesting, where it's like, okay, set up some sort of like home pollution monitoring system, where, I don't know, you can like figure out some outcome you want, where it's like, so that you can like look at seasonal trends or like,
right.
And then have them set up that whole system and like upload to Airtable or whatever, and so they can appreciate the complexity, like you said, of collecting the data, of like modeling the data, transferring it, storing it.
Right. And like, like one important question is often like, why is there missing data? Right. And I think that can be a very abstract question sometimes, but if you actually try to collect it yourself, you're like, oh, I know exactly why there's missing data,
Yeah.
And so, it's anyway. So anyway, I'll have to think about that a little bit more, but maybe I'll.
Yeah. Well, also it empowers the data scientists to realistically suggest solutions too.
Right. If they have even just a little bit of experience, doing some of these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I should have like a little welcome basket for like the
exactly.
new postdocs and students that has like an air monitor in there and like a,
I think that's a great idea.
It's an expensive welcome basket though. So.
Yeah, that's true. But you have grants, right?
I should have a line item in the budget for a postdoc welcome basket.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What else should be maybe like
point them to the podcast and they're like, why on earth would you do this?
Maybe like a USB key that has like select episodes of our podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Have you seen What About Bob?
I don't know. I don't think so.
What?
Wait. No, I don't think so. No.
It's such a good. I don't know about good, but it's like a classic.
It's a something.
It's a movie that people have seen. But anyway, the idea of it is just that there's this patient who's like totally boundaries are an issue. Let's put it that way. And there's like the one of the first scenes is like one shrink calling another to be like, I have this fascinating patient, like you should take him on. And then the guy who's taking him on is like this massive egomaniac, and he and the first psychiatrist is like, I'm free finally, And so anyway, in the first meeting, it's like Bill Murray is the patient, and in the first meeting the guy's like, in his office, and he kind of walks over. He's like, there's this groundbreaking new book. And he like pulls off one of his books from the bookshelf. And, like, anyway, I don't know why. That just really reminded me of that scene where it's like, yeah, there's
an amazing podcast on this topic. There's this
amazing book that I want you to have access. This amazing episode. And I happen to be, the author. It's like his bookshelf is only that book.
Right.
Anyway, highly recommend. It's pretty funny because like it seems like no one else gets that there's like this massive boundary issue, but like, and then the like psychiatrist like losing his mind, Anyway.
Where was I? All right. I've been thinking about getting into the live streaming game. What do you think?
Really?
What do you think of this topic?
So
I feel like it's a platform that I haven't experimented with.
I think it would be really interesting. It also reminds me of this Harvard Business Review thing about cross-silo leadership.
Oh, yeah?
Where I think it was that one. I'll double check, but they were talking about like you kind of have to keep up with like local technology. I think one of the things they said is like, how can you tell if you're kind of an institutionalist or like, I don't know, like a stick in the mud? And they're like, you don't use new platforms for communication. Like if the team's using Slack, you need to learn Slack or things like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, like live stream reminds me of that, where I'm like, I've not adapted to the new platform. Yeah.
Well, like my son has like watches, he doesn't watch a lot of live streaming, but like he does, I'm impressed with his ability to just like sit and watch it.
Yeah, totally.
And frankly, I do too. Like, like, so he watches. There are like these people on YouTube who play. It's a program called Kerbal Space Program, and it's kind of like a flight simulator, but for rockets, basically.
Oh wow! Oh, because he's like really into space,
right? Yeah. So and so you can like build rockets, and you can fly them into space, and it simulates all the physics and everything. And so like people will just like live stream it and play for hours. There is something compelling about it. I don't know what, but I don't know. Yeah.
You're still exploring this emotional reaction you have.
Exactly. Yes. So
yeah.
Anyway,
interesting.
I was thinking about live. People have like recorded data analyses, right? And I have too, but like to do it in a way that's like kind of edited is super like it's a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, maybe live streaming it would be like simple because then I won't have to edit it.
That's like everyone's nightmare, like doing a presentation live coding.
Right. Well, I think like a good live stream is somewhere in between like an actual thing that's happening and like a talk show essentially, or like a podcast.
Yeah.
It's like a hybrid of the two things.
Interesting.
So I thought, well, I have a podcast and I analyze data. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Your kid's keeping you connected with, the world, but you're open to it. You're not just one of those parents who's like, ugh, what is this? No, I've never tried. Like, I feel like the whole like YouTube star live streaming, whatever. I've never tried it, and I don't get it. I feel resistance.
Yeah,
and I should explore that.
Jeff Leake told me that it was a bad idea, but I should definitely do it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
That one reminds me. Have you seen the movie King of Kong?
Yes, but I have seen it for sure. But I don't remember any of it.
How can you not remember?
It's about the guy who tries to like beat the play Donkey Kong, right?
Yeah, and there's like Billy Mitchell, who's this like cartoon character of a person
right,
with
yes.
like long hair. So anyway, I researching this, I recently rewatched it, and I guess Billy Mitchell got like ousted from all the record books and stuff.
Oh,
because I think one of the tapes in the movie was some sort of simulator rather than the actual machine, and people recognized it.
The idea is that you have to like send in a tape of you playing the game and reaching the high score.
Well, and he was playing it, but it just wasn't on an official machine. It was on this like simulator thing.
Oh, okay.
And therefore, and like, I mean, in the movie, they like the the guy who was like the original ref who like was like, I get to watch records every single day, like
right.
And he's like sitting there like watching like 12 hours of tape, like doing like wrist exercises. And anyway, he like, what they don't say in the documentary is that he quit in the middle because he was like, we could not accept this tape from Steve Wiebe. And they were like Walter Day was like, no, we're accepting it. Like, we look like such jerks. And he was like, no, I am dedicated to the truth. So anyway, there's like, there's a lot of controversy, but eventually he got kicked out, Billy Mitchell, because of this issue that he wasn't using the right board and wasn't straightforward about it, whatever. And so, anyway, he has now switched to live streaming. Like, he goes and plays Donkey Kong all the time and live streams it, and people watch it.
Oh, okay.
To like reclaim his glory.
I see.
Yeah. So some interesting. I don't get that. I mean, that whole movie I did not get. I like that was a culture that was fascinating to get a glimpse into.
That was a movie that like is one of the things that like Brian Caffo came into my office one day. It was like, stop everything, you have to watch this movie.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
I mean, that was like, if ever there were a movie like that, it was it. Yeah.
He probably both identified with the people and was like horrified by that.
Right. Wasn't it that like in order to beat the official record, you had to like play it on like a specific console in New Hampshire or somewhere or something like that?
Well, no, it's that was like the place where everyone went all the time.
Right, like because it was like an arcade museum or something like that, right?
Yeah, it was like they all went there. They had that like hilarious cut of someone who was like really mad and he was like slamming down his keyboard, and then he like goes and like slams the trunk and it starts like the alarm goes off, and then you see him just like walk away and like beep beep, like turn off the alarm. Right. But yeah, so it wasn't, you had to be on a real machine, but it didn't have to be there, but you did have to have like a witness, or I don't know. They had tournaments though, I think. Yeah. Okay. And so, but like there was the guy who like retired from his banking job to move near there and just play every day. Right. Yeah. It was. And then there was one guy in the first scene who I really appreciated. He's like, I don't drink, I don't do drugs. I just play video games. That is far more addictive than those other things. Right. And I was like, yeah, this guy gets it.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, sorry, another movie tangent.
Well, just to be clear, I have no intention of live streaming video games. I don't play any video games, so.
But are you going to get addicted to live streaming?
I can see how that could happen, but I think it's just a little bit too much work, I think, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I don't get it, but it's fascinating. And I'll try. I need to try. Maybe I'll live stream some people like I don't want to say getting dressed, not that, but like putting together outfits or something like that.
Like in the movie Clueless.
Yeah, exactly, but not in a gross way.
Right. I have thought about live streaming this podcast actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think Diane Reed. I've seen that before.
Many podcasts do it actually.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, because it's kind of easy to do, I think.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to visualize like what the people are doing,
and then also you can have like a live audience. Like with like a chat room or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should try that. That would be fun.
I don't know, but like, what's a good time to do that? I guess any time, really. I mean,
yeah, it's like who's going to like tune in at like 10 a.m.
I don't know. I mean, we do.
Yeah. Who has jobs out there?
Yeah. Maybe we should. We could test the waters and say we'll do one episode live.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to like not say stuff that needs to be edited out.
Right, we'll have to be on our game a little bit more.
Yeah.
I have to first. I need to like figure out how to do it though. I think it might cost us some money.
We would both have to set up cameras and stuff, right?
No, we don't have to do video.
Oh, just live stream recording it.
Yeah, just live stream the audio. Yeah,
I see.
Yeah,
I was thinking live stream like videos of us doing it.
Well, I don't know. That seems a little excessive.
We could just take our I have an external webcam, so I could just set it up in a way so that it's not just like a video chat, but it's actually like, here's Hillary sitting on her weird chair. Yeah. I
think we should make a whole episode about the chair.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I have a chair update that I feel like is podcast appropriate.
All right, let's hear it.
Which is that, yeah, so I have this like chair that I've heard actually some listeners have like taken the plunge. So,
oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. The people actually got in touch with me. So that was nice to hear. Hopefully people like it. I hope it was a positive impact on your life. And so yeah, this is like this soul seat, kind of like alien looking chair. And so I had it at the office, and I mean, there was like one kneeling desk floating around, or not kneeling desk, kneeling chair. Have you like the more traditional ones? Yeah. And then there's one person who sits on one of those exercise balls.
Okay.
But I definitely had the weirdest chair. But like since then, there's been a rash of people with like weirder chairs and setups who joined the company. And so, yeah, like there's one person with this like bizarre looking stool. It looks like a big plus sign or something. And then there's someone else who has just this like high chair with like foam like duct taped onto it. And then the best one is someone who has this like large leaf that is like, I mean, it's not a real leaf. It's like, it's essentially like an umbrella for his desk that shields the fluorescent lights.
Oh, it's not a chair. Sorry. Yeah. I'm like,
No, yeah, this one's not a chair. It's just, it's an IKEA hack where it's actually something for like kids' beds to put over them, but you can put them on your desk. Okay. And so there's just like one desk with this large like leaf umbrella that's like attached via kind of a monitor arm.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was just like, oh wow, mine seems like tame now. Like,
now, do you think this is coincidental, or do you think that they saw you and they're like, well, if Hillary can go out on a limb, then I'm going to go?
They're all new people, so I don't know.
Huh.
Like, it's not like, oh, this person had a normal setup and now they don't.
Okay. So you can't claim credit.
I don't know, but I feel happy. I definitely looked into the leaf thing right away. I think people genuinely get migraines from the fluorescent light, and so yeah, having something that keeps that from you. I just wish there's some like interesting kind of like tents, like office tents you can have.
No.
You can like rather than just one person, it's like a tent that encompasses an entire like pod of desks.
I need to visit your office sometime.
Yeah, ours is not. I mean, the Etsy office was like epic.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, there was like yarn bombing of all the pipes and just all sorts of stuff. But tech offices are something else. But it's also interesting because we're essentially rebuilding cubicles, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Just like less efficiently.
I guess that's what a tent really is, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess cubicles usually didn't have overhead.
Right. There's no protection from the rain in a
that
cubicle.
feels like an easy hack, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you just like pin what are those things called? The tapestry, like a very very popular in college lighting solution. Pin tapestries over the lights.
Oh yes, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's been a long time since I was in college. So
it has, yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to, you won't be alone for long, is what I'm telling people, if you choose to pursue a non-traditional desk setup.
Yes.
There seems to be a rash, if I project what's happening here with everywhere.
I only had one more thing on my list, which I don't know if you want to talk about at all, but it is this bot that auto-rejects papers from journals.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I saw that. That tweet. Did you see that independent of me?
No, I just saw it when you retweeted it.
Yeah, it was. That was just sort of an interesting. Someone was talking about how their paper got flagged for plagiarism,
like automatically, and then just got rejected. Yeah.
Yeah, and it turned out the plagiarism was because there was like the same authors and the same affiliations and the same methods section
and the references.
The references, yeah. It's just like, and the methods section, it's like kind of like boilerplate, like
right, because it was like
repeated.
the same data from one study or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And they were just. I think they even suggested like having a human in the loop, which I feel like a bias I have seen for data scientists that I'm trying to counter is like this desire. I feel like people just have such a desire for a fully automated system. And I just don't agree with that. Like, I think that human curation provides like a huge amount of value to data in general, whether it's just data you're collecting or algorithmic output.
I mean, I think you can kind of understand the desire for total automation, right? I mean, or can you
It's
not?
like an efficiency. Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, I think it's an efficiency gain.
I guess, part of me wonders, like, I feel like, what's the appropriate way to kind of argue against that? Because I feel like it's almost taken as a given that more automation is better.
Yeah. I mean, in some way, like, I feel like I've seen that human labels can really increase the value of data, or like human intervention or whatever you call it. And then, sorry, my cat just like got very active. I
thought I heard something.
Yeah, she like jumped up on and then But yeah, like I think people, yeah, I don't know what it is, but I think it's probably like complexity of the pipeline and the system you need to build that's like largely at play. And then there's obviously some solutions, like if you want to have recommendations, like every time someone clicks on a product in Amazon, like you just can't do that. But what you could do is set up like a validation pipeline where you have people looking at their recommendations and saying whether or not they're good, and you can evaluate the algorithms like effectiveness not only on purchase data but also on this sort of more qualitative did this feel right data.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big proponent for that, in part because in our business we obviously have a human in the loop. Like that's kind of the whole business model, is that we algorithmically match clothes to people, but then we have a human like curator on top of that who like chooses exactly what you get and gives you styling selections and whatever.
Right.
So I feel like I'm usually the person who's like, no, I'm willing to deal with the complexity, but I want this more accurate, form of data. So
I don't know. I feel like there's two competing philosophies. One is like the kind of like total automation philosophy, and the other is kind of I think of it as like the Steve Jobs like bicycle for the mind philosophy. So like the tools are there to help humans be better.
Exactly.
But they're not there to replace the humans, right? I guess.
Yeah. I'm definitely in the latter group. Like, how can you automate the things that are not fun and creative so that you let people be fun and creative?
Right. Yeah. Because like I think because it's like ultimately there's not to put this only in the framework of like statistical models, but there's like the part that you could explain, and there's the part that's kind of like the random part, right? And
right. So I mean, we're explicit with that at Stitch Fix. Yeah.
So
like we admit that we can't model fashion, and it's crazy hard to model.
Yeah. I guess the question is, do you just let that be, or do you try to minimize that random part to zero, essentially?
We're trying to minimize the random part, but not like try to get rid of. There's other things the stylist can do, like there's not like they're still writing a note that's personal. Like there's the styling suggestion, and then there's also like the fact that clothes, like trends change rapidly, and the whole like you can't necessarily project into the future. So and we get new clothes in. Like there's like an aspect of error checking, and there's an aspect of like expertise add on, and then but like there are still so many parts of their job that could be improved with the algorithm. So it's like a partnership. It's not like they feel like we're automating the jobs away.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I wish that we could sort this way, or I wish that these things didn't show up. And we're like, yes, we're working on that. So, yeah.
All right.
That's my point of view. It seems like you don't have a strong point of view.
No, I think I'm with you on that. Like, I just, I'm trying to, one thing I struggle with is like, I feel like it's like a weird dichotomy between the two. I don't think they necessarily, it's either or. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I just, maybe I'm just tired.
It's like too late in the podcast to have a good point of view.
Yeah.
I had one other thought, which is that, the A/B test. Well, I guess I have two other thoughts, which is that I actually feel like one place where this really comes up is people wanting to like web scrape data versus create a data set that's smaller but more accurate. And for the applications I am using, the smaller, more accurate data is like so much better than this like huge pile of web scrape data or something. I mean, not that, a huge pile of whatever data that's like you're reappropriating for new use. And then the other thing I was going to say is that I actually, saying this out loud makes me think of like my railing against A/B testing automation. Because it essentially turns analysis into like a human in the loop prediction problem.
Okay.
Where you like generate all these things and then the human like curates on top of it. Which is like, and that one, it almost feels like you are going toward total automation. And I just think that will never work.
Yeah, I have a hard time coming up with a strong, like, I guess the question is why. It's like there's something that humans do that can't be captured. But almost by definition, it's hard to explain because if you could explain it, then you would capture it.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I think maybe that's the problem I'm having. It's like, how do you explain that to people?
Right.
But
well, I think with I think with the fashion, there's just genuinely like it is like artistic composition to come up with outfits and stuff.
yeah, I think there's a common understanding there about fashion, just because people kind of are exposed to it.
Right.
But when you get to more niche topics, I think that people think, oh, you can just automate the whole thing, no big deal.
Right. Right.
So,
like the fact that data analysis, we're like framing it as this design problem, the automation is saying like, no, it's not.
right,
Or like,
right.
you can design the tool, but then the decisions will automatically flow from it. And it's just like, I think every time that there's a bespokeness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway. As Roger's losing steam, we should wrap it up.